I've recently been having some discussions with atheists, and it amuses me how they treat science and they seem so possessive of it. What do I mean about being possessive of science? Well, there's two cases, and I'm going to describe them each individually and go through them both. The first one is a person who logs onto my video and says, "You don't know anything about science." Now, first of all, this is not a point. If you're going to write this is completely invalid. After all, even assuming it was correct and someone, call them person A, had no idea about science whatsoever, what if they knew nothing at all and they said the force which is currently holding me to the ground is gravity? Even if they had no other idea of science, even if they did not know what those words meant, they would still be correct. Saying you don't know anything about science has no implication upon the point which is being made. If the person doesn't know anything about science and therefore they are wrong, then what you would say, if you did know anything about science yourself, is you don't know this, or you're wrong because of this. The actual understanding of science is completely irrelevant to the point, unless you don't actually have any point yourself, because what you're doing is criticising the person and not the point they're making. So basically, by saying that, you're almost going in with the fact that you don't have any point to make against the argument. You have no counter-argument, you're just criticising the person. No more useful than, someone coming up and making a good political speech and then you saying, "Yes, but your hair's funny." It's just pretty useless. That's the first point. The second point, which sort of inspired me, was how there's one person who I was recently discussing things with, and they were adamant that I could not possibly have thought of this scientific argument myself. Now, out of all the videos that I put on YouTube, I've pretty much thought of every single one independently, apart from, I believe, the one on convergence of evolution, which I heard from an Oxford professor quite a while back, probably 2 years ago now. Now, the rest of them I've thought about myself, but this person seems so adamant that I could not possibly, or someone I knew, which was the actual case, thought of this independently. Now, this got me wondering, why was it so important to them that I did not think of this? Why was that even relevant? I mean, if someone else thought of it, or I thought of it, or someone who is part of a corporation or an organisation, why does that make any difference to the validity of an argument? I don't know. So it got me thinking. The conclusion that I came up with is largely this. Atheists want to own science. They're possessive of it. They want it to be theirs, and they don't want it to be anyone else's, particularly if you have a religion. And why is this? Well, they want an air of objectivity. And if someone else, if they've got a religion particularly, starts using science, genuine science, to blow their worldview out of the water, they start to get a bit concerned, because they really don't like that. Because the truth is, the central tenets of atheism are completely unprovable. How can you prove that there isn't a God? A true scientist can't even be an atheist. At best, they can be an agnostic, because you cannot prove scientifically, through test, observation and repeat, that there isn't a God. The closest you can get is by saying, "I have had no experience of God, and therefore I do not believe it." But that is a personal choice. You cannot prove there's not a God. And so a real scientist can only ever really be an agnostic. So again, there's this desire to be objective, and in order to back this up, they need to look like they're using science. If you don't, well, there's some problems starting there, and I'll get to that a bit later on. So, can we think of any examples of this, apart from me? Well, in the Royal Society, which is a very respected scientific institution, there was a guy pretty high up called Professor Michael Rees. That's Rees, R-E-I-S-S. And this chap said, maybe we should have a discussion on creationism and evolution. and about, you know, the pros and cons. Now, this guy was immediately pressured into resigning. And this makes me wonder, isn't that a bit absurd? Isn't that a very emotional response? Because if someone came up to you and they said, why don't we discuss gravity, or why don't we discuss germ theory, there wouldn't be an issue. So why is there such a furore about this? After all, the professor didn't say we should teach creation to children. He didn't say we should definitely adopt creation as part of a syllabus in school. He never said any of that. What he said was maybe we should discuss it. Maybe we should have a discussion about it. Now, why would you fire someone for saying they wanted to discuss something? Even if someone came up to you and had a completely absurd idea, and they said, oh, why don't we do this? You wouldn't refuse to discuss with them. You'd just say, that's a ridiculous idea because of this, this and this. The only reason why you wouldn't want to discuss something with someone is that basically you've got no answer. And if you do start discussing with it, the fact that you've got no answer might actually be shown to everyone. Whereas if you can just pressure the person into leaving or getting rid of them, then that's no problem. You might think this Professor Michael Rees chap is a bit of an idiot and pretty ignorant, doesn't really know much about science, which is why he thinks discussing creationism could actually be useful. But actually, he's done quite well. How well would you say? Well, he's in the Royal Society. That means he's probably knows something about science. He's a professor, which also suggests that he knows something about science, but not conclusively. What about the fact he's a Nobel Prize winner? The Nobel Prize laureate has got to be one of the highest sought after accomplishments any scientist can really achieve, and he actually won it. So he's got to know something, surely. But that didn't stop people who didn't want God being discussed forcing him out. So why is it so important for atheists to have this, to cling to science and this supposed objectivity that they like to have, that they want to claim is exclusively theirs? Why do they want to pretend that they've got this objectivity? Do they actually have objectivity? Well, I've got a quote which is by Stephen Hawking on my YouTube page actually, and it's been there for a while, and I'll just put it up for you. Now clearly, studying that quote, we can see that people, they're just not objective. Atheists are not objective. If there's something which suggests that there's a God or creation, they don't like it. So now I'll get back to my original question. Why is it so important for atheists to pretend they're objective? Why is it so important for them to claim that science is exclusively theirs and can't be used by anyone else? Well, very simply, the reason why is because when you take all that away, they're left with nothing. They don't have an authoritative book. They don't have anything. All they've got is a worldview of what they want to believe, and when they're left with that, it's really not very convincing. So what do I want to say to Christians out there? Well, don't be afraid to question things. I encourage people to study science, all the sciences, as much as possible, and if there's things that you don't understand, question the assumptions and go through them and just keep on looking. After all, the Bible endorses the acquisition of knowledge wholeheartedly. There are many points in Proverbs and Psalms about understanding, learning and knowledge. So, as far as I'm concerned, we've got nothing to lose. The truth is there, and it backs us up, so great. Any questions, feel free to post.